Hello and welcome. Thank you so much for joining me today. This is Cheryl. I'm so glad you stopped by. In this video, I'm going to share with you creating a beautiful foiled and alcohol inked poppy card. However, there's a little bit of a roller coaster that happens with this card, and sometimes card making is like that. So I've got some glossy cardstock here. It's alcohol ink cardstock. I'm using some isopropyl alcohol, and I've got 3 different alcohol ink colors. I'll have everything listed and linked down in the description below. I didn't want my background to have a solid color to it. That's why I'm using a few different colors. I wanted it to have a little bit of variation. If I wanted a solid color, I would have just used a solid color cardstock. I spray my surface with the isopropyl alcohol and then a little bit of each of the colors of alcohol ink. Now, I am not looking for a beautiful background here. I'm just trying to cover it with color because I plan on foiling over top of this. I don't want just one solid color, and I'm not looking for, basically all I'm looking for is just color over top and a little bit of variation between the different colors of alcohol inks that I've chosen here. I'm using an alcohol ink blower tool to blow my alcohol inks around. Sometimes when you're doing alcohol ink backgrounds, when the ink builds up in places, it can be a little bit sticky. So I'm trying to blow all of that out so that I don't have any sticky areas on my background. Like I said, I plan on foiling this, so my thought was if I have some sticky areas, the foil is going to stick to those areas. An alcohol ink blower is an excellent tool, especially for a beginner. It's nice and inexpensive, but it works perfectly for blowing the alcohol inks around. You can use like an empty bottle or whatnot from the dollar store. I've tried it before. It works. However, an alcohol ink blower tool inflates a lot easier and a lot quicker, and it's a lot easier on your hand. So if you're new to alcohol inks and you want to try it, you can try an empty bottle to start just to see if that might be your cup of tea, if alcohol inks might be something that you want to get into. But I do recommend an alcohol ink blower tool if you decide that you do want to get into it a little bit more. So my backgrounds have been finished. They're completely dried. I'm just going to measure my foil for on top of the background here. I want to cover the entire foil plate with the foil. I want to do a silver one as well as a gold one. Red and gold typically look really, really nice together, which is why I plan on doing that. But gold isn't my favorite metallic color, silver is, and that's why I decided to do one of each. I put my pieces down on my Glimmer hot foiling machine, plate with the pattern side up, foil with the pretty side facing the foil plate, and then my cardstock over top of that. I hit my button for the platform, and as soon as it stopped blinking, I put it through my Big Shot machine for the pressure. You need the heat and the pressure. When I pulled the foil off of my background, it didn't foil really well. And after that, I don't know why in the world I did the second one. I just was on a roll and I decided to see if I could get it better. So that didn't work. It had a lot of overfoiling. It was shaggy. I didn't get a nice clean image. So after thinking about it for a day or two, I decided to try again and just tweak it a little bit to see if I could get a cleaner foiled image. I've foiled glossy cardstock plain before, and it foils absolutely beautiful, so I know it's not the cardstock that's the issue, it's the alcohol ink. So this time, because it's just an experiment to see if I can get a better result, I am only doing one. I'm doing the same process as the first one. I'm doing the 3 alcohol ink colors, isopropyl alcohol, and I'm using my alcohol ink blower to blow around and just get a covered background. So for this one, I'm going to use my embossing powder tool, and I'm going to give it some really nice coverage and hope that helps to prevent the sticking that I had with the last foiling. And hopefully this time I'll get a good foiled image. So I've got my plate warmed up, the foil pretty side to the plate, and then my paper down. Press the timer. Once the timer button says that the time is done, I'm going to put it through my Big Shot machine. And it's better, but it's still fairly shaggy. It doesn't really have a nice clean image. So here is the backup plan. I've got some clear Duralar here, and I know it foils beautifully. So it's actually clear. It's got a piece of tissue paper in between each and every one of the pieces of Duralar, and it is heat resistant, so it's going to be able to handle the heat from my hot foiling plate. I'm measuring my foil, got my foil plate nice and warm, put it all together, and then put it in machine and press the timer button. Then put it through my Big Shot machine for the pressure. When I take the foil off, like I expected. I've got a beautiful, nice, clean foiled image here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use those same colors of alcohol inks, and I'm going to do them on the back so that I can see the alcohol ink behind as well as the foiling on the front. Now, often when you have problems with card making, there's often a solution, and it's not really one that you ever thought about. When I started this project, or when I ordered my foiling plate, this is not what I had in mind. What I had in mind was the very first one, and I imagined it was going to foil beautifully, but sometimes you need to do some creative problem solving, and that's what I ended up doing here. I'm doing the same thing as before, nice even image or even coverage from the alcohol inks that I'm blowing around with the alcohol ink blower, and then I'm going to wait for it to dry completely. Now, while it was drying, I thought, you know what, with the Duralar, it's nice and transparent. What happens if we cover the back with glitter? And then we're going to have the color plus a nice glitter sparkle to it. So I took some Sook Wang, covered the back with it, make sure that there is good coverage with that tape on there, and then I took the backing off and covered it with some microfine glitter. Now, when you're working with microfine glitter, you're going to put it all over the Sook Wang, and then you're going to use a little bit of that tape backing, and you're going to burnish it. That's going to lay that glitter down nice and flat. It's going to give it some nice sparkle, and it's going to make sure that we don't have any excess glitter falling off of our card. So I take a piece of that backing. It only needs to be a little piece. If you don't happen to save the backing, you could use a piece of parchment paper or a piece of wax paper. Even just a piece of scrap paper would work. But you want to make sure that you've got that burnished down really, really nicely. The sparkle comes out so much more once you have burnished it. I had a little bubble in there, so I took an X-Acto knife just to slice through it and then rubbed it down again. So there is my background. The glitter is not super obvious. It's very subtle, but it's really, really pretty. I'm going to trim down my background here, and I actually end up trimming it to 3 3/4 by 5 inches. This is to go on the front of an A2 card, which is 4 1/4 by 5 1/2, but I wanted to give it a silver matte around it. So I'm going to take my background here, and I'm going to glue it onto some white cardstock just to make sure that I don't see that silver cards or the silver mirror cardstock behind it. I'm using some Distress Collage medium to glue it down. I love using Distress Collage medium on most of my card making projects because it dries nice and clear. So off camera, I got my card base prepared as well as my silver matte. I am using a Thanks shadow die to do a sentiment on here. And here's a trick that I like to do. When I use some metallic cardstock, if I decide to use that same cardstock as a sentiment, I will often use my mat to cut out my sentiment. It goes behind an image and no one ever knows that part of it is cut out. And you could actually cut several out and have some prepared sentiments for other projects if you wanted to. But that way you're getting more use out of your expensive metallic cardstock. And like I said, it's something I do often and no one has ever guessed that there's a piece cut out of that mat behind there. It's a great way to use up more of, or get more out of your cardstock, especially the more expensive ones. So I've got my Thanks die here. I've got the shadow that I've cut some extras out of scraps and I'm layering them on top of each other. And then I'm putting my silver Thanks on top of that, holding it a little bit just to make sure that that glue sets nicely before I glue it onto my card. And then I like to put an acrylic block on top just to hold it in place so that I have my hands free to do other things. And once that is dry, here is the final card. This is exactly the look I was going for, but not the way that I intended to make it. Thank you so much for joining me. Have a great day.